Making a voyeuristic erotic thriller in the vein of Rear Window sounds like a good idea. Making one in the vein of Rear Window without any of the bite, well, that's another. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. So Netflix has dropped a new erotic thriller called The Voyeurs, starring Sydney Sweeney and Justice Smith. Erotic thrillers is a genre you have not heard in quite some time. Those are films like Sliver or Bound or Basic Instinct, where it's a thriller, some twists and turns, but there's a lot of high-end eroticism in the film. It's a genre that's sort of been lost. We don't get to make these type of films anymore, the adult audiences, because most movies are now made for what we consider to be a general audience or a four quadrant. So the adult stuff, like those hard R-rated dramas or actions, or in this case, the erotic thrillers, don't get made nearly as much in America. Foreign markets still get their eroticism on, but here we don't get these as much and as often as we could. So when I heard that we were doing an erotic thriller, I'm like, well, then let me check this out because I want to see what this is about, especially when they keep saying that they're in the vein of Rear Window or Body Double. Let me say that those are two titles that this movie should aptly not be comparing itself to, should be avoiding at all costs. This film stars Sydney Sweeney as Pippa. For those of you who don't know, Sydney Sweeney is a young lady who was on Euphoria and just recently on The White Lotus. Um, and she stars as a woman named Pippa, as a young couple with her and Tom, played by Justice Smith, who move into this new apartment complex. And in their apartment, it's a loft, open windows, big things. And there's what we are to believe this happy, loving couple who wind up in this entanglement of looking at voyeuristically, looking at across the way in the other townhouse with open windows, a couple who seems to be turning turning them on in ways sexually and getting they started going down the rabbit hole of getting overly involved in their life. I think for erotic thrillers to work, there needs to be some chemistry. For me, there is no chemistry between Pippa and Thomas or Pippa and Seb, who is the eye of their voyeurism. And that is the biggest thing that the issue that this film has. I think, I'll try to stay away from spoilers. I think for this film to work, for the back end, with all the implausible and just weird and just wild stuff that they try to get across for this film, for any of that to work, you have to believe at the very essence of this that Thomas and Pippa are madly in love, are a happy, loving couple. And I don't feel any of that. They say the words, but I don't feel that they are actually a couple. And so when things tragically happen to them, it doesn't hold much weight because it wasn't earned on the front end that they are actually a loving couple. They seem like, yeah, they're roommates that fuck every now and then, but there doesn't seem to be an actual chemistry or love between the two of them. So that makes everything that sort of happens on the tail end of this seem to happen only because the script says so, not because we've earned the through line to get to that point. And I don't know, Sydney and Justice, apart from each other, are really solid actors. Together, it is just not working, and it leads to problems for the rest of the film. I don't think Seb and Pippa actually even have that much chemistry together. When you get to the point where they are banging, it is a really intense and viscerally seen sex scene. It doesn't quite work because I don't really feel the attraction between the two of them, and I won't believe it because we are to believe that Pippa wants to be have 4 years of just being getting to sort of do the wild stuff that she didn't get to do because she was so buttoned up and reserved before, and we get this pretty deep exposition at the very beginning of this film where they sort of just talk at each other instead of I think would be better to just show us this stuff. We sort of have to hear them talk about how, hey, no kids for 4 years because I wanted to be wild and get drunk. And Thomas seems to be okay with that. He's like, yeah, that's fine. But even with that, it still seems like she's just not getting the sexual attention that she wants from Thomas that I think she thinks she would get from Sap. Which, side note, if Sydney Sweeney is in lingerie, Thomas, wake your ass up. Like, what are you doing? Neither here nor there. I just don't feel any of the connections with any of the people that Sydney is trying to get involved with. This is a this is an erotic thriller made in that weird thing for young adults. It's like that 18 to 26 range because a lot of this plays a lot younger than the adult thrillers that I've sort of mentioned with Bound and Basic Instinct. Because a lot of the stuff just doesn't feel at there's as much heft or weight to it, and then we get into the back end of where it starts playing like an old horror movie or Don't Breathe type of thing, where people are trying to one up it, and where the morals and implausibility of both sides just sort of start going out the window, and you're like, well, then I don't know who to root for here because all of you are wrong, and they're doing things to a point where none of this is remotely close to believable. And I think for erotic thrillers to sort of work, there has to be some sense of tangibility or realness to it, which is a little harder to reach when you don't feel any connection to any of the characters. Now, there are some good things to this. I do think, again, like I said, the erotic thriller is a genre that just doesn't exist anymore. Should I have a film that does just go for it? It has some pretty insane and visceral and intense sex scenes. Kudos to them. I think it is smart for the director to spend. We get a lot of side boob and back shots of Sydney for the majority of the film, but we hide her and don't go all in on her until the actual moment that she sort of uh, steps into a world that probably doesn't belong to her. And that's when she sort of opens up and lets down her guard and gets on fully nude. Let me say this about Sydney. I mentioned that she does not have chemistry with either of the two male leads in this. She does have chemistry with the other female lead, but she is really good in this. This isn't this the chemistry I don't feel or lack thereof comes from her end. I think she's doing everything. Like she is engaging. Like I want to watch more of her because she is. I would have probably bailed on this film if it were not for Sydney. Like she is good from top to bottom of this film, and I believe her all the way through. I just wish the script gave her a little bit more to do and became a little bit more earnest in its back end. And I also feel that if there was a stronger connection between she and Thomas, it would have made the weight that she has at the end when certain things happen work. It ends up being like we're seeing cutscene after cutscene of her going through the emotions and thought of it in a stylistic way of showing that, but it doesn't really feel like there's anything there because I don't think for many of this stuff that the two of them actually love each other. And so when you have that as a movie, when there's an erotic thriller where you have a couple who were supposed to be together but doesn't feel like they are actually in a relationship, when if and when she steps out and goes to another person, you're kind of like, oh yeah, okay. I mean that makes sense. But because she doesn't really have a tie to either of them, it just feels like poor Sydney is just going through this film in the beats of whatever the director and the writer are doing. It doesn't really feel like there's anything that's earned on the page. She's doing all that she can because I think, like I said, I really feel like Sydney is killing this. But the movie itself is just not doing her any favors. I, I have to get into a bit of spoilers here. There's just a lot of stuff that happens on the back end of this that is just implausible with the tit for tat that happens. I'm not going to go into specifics, but there's just a lot of tit for tat that happens with them trying to one up each other that just does not legally or even tangibly or just the inability for any of this to actually happen is mind blowing. And so you're sitting here like, okay, this just went away from being an erotic thriller to now becoming this weird one-upsmanship of cat and mouse. I don't like either of the couples or anybody else that's remaining on the board. So now I have just spent an hour plus exercise watching Sydney show that she should be a leading actress and should be getting more work and is not afraid of bearing herself for nude scenes and doing an erotic thriller for a movie that at the end of the day you're going to forget as soon as it's over with outside of the amazing and just vulnerableness that Sydney puts on. Sydney is the reason, the price of admission for this. Once you get past her performance and the sex scene that I know a lot of people are going to be talking about, it's kind of just like, what are we doing here? Like, why was this movie a thing? So on my scale of once is enough, play it again, Sam, or give me a time stone so I never have to think about this film again. Because Sydney is so good and because that scene is very intense, I don't want to erase my brain. I do want to keep it in there. But once is enough. I'll never watch this film again. I will point to it to people if when they want to be like, hey, is there something else that Sydney's done besides White Lotus and Euphoria that you want to see her in? Sure, there's a starring vehicle that she gets to do, but I think the movie could be a lot better for her. I will say this. I'm sure it's been mentioned before. If there's ever a point where Amanda Seyfried needs a younger sister to play in a film with her, the two of them should do a movie together because they bear a striking resemblance both in the face and physically. They're just they feel like they could be siblings or at least cousins at the very least. But that's my thoughts on the Voyeurs. I wouldn't waste time. If you want an adult erotic thriller, I would say that there are better places to go. This is for a young adult audience who is just for the first time getting into erotic thrillers. This is basically, if it wasn't for the intense sex scene in the middle of it, I feel like this is basically what Goosebumps is for horror fans or those. It's like a precursor to getting into the good stuff. It's sort of just a taste of what could be done with really well done erotic thrillers before a made for TV YA audience. And it's hard to say YA because it is very detailed and deliberate sex scenes in this, but that's how this works. What did you guys think about the Voyeurs? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI, or you can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and here in YouTube. We're currently doing a run called Marvel Pair-Ups, where we take the what if shows that are currently running on Disney Plus and pair them with a non-canon MCU film like Blade or Incredible Hulk, Ang Lee Incredible Hulk. We also have our original podcast where we talk about sequels, reboots, prequels, remakes, all that good stuff. That is also here and on YouTube and anywhere else that podcasts are played. And our last episode for that was with Shang-Chi. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.